2011, I taught 2 summer courses. I directed a federal budget research organization, and I paid taxes. Taxes are the dues I pay for living in a democracy. Like you, I pay taxes at the local, the state, and the federal level. Tonight, I want us all to fall just a little bit in love with the federal budget. And there's no better way that I know of to do that than understanding where our tax dollars, where our federal income tax and our payroll taxes go. So I'm going to tell you a story, a love story, my story of the federal budget, our tax dollars, and how they affect my life. So meet my children. My daughter is 6, going on 33. She's a fierce and independent, bold cyclone. My son is 4. In 1 second, he is gentle and wise, and in another, he is, well, some sort of combo platter superhero. My partner, Anne, and I, we adopted our children through the Department of Social Services. They are the joys of our life, and they are each other's best friends. We think our son is going to be a scientist or an engineer. He uses words like stupendous and ominous. Anne and I can no longer spell in front of him. Our daughter, she belts out independent songs in the shower, originals, if you will. And she is an absolute fierce defender of the underdog. You're wondering how your taxes connect with my kids. Well, you and I, we're our nation's major bill payers. Between us, between our federal income taxes and our payroll taxes, we're going to come up with about 80% of federal revenue this year. That's about $2.6 trillion, one taxpayer at a time. Our money goes into a big nebulous thing called the federal budget. Our income taxes go into a pot of money, and they're joined there by much smaller amounts of corporate, estate, and gift and excise taxes, customs, and also borrowing in the years that our government is going to spend more money than it takes in revenue. This pot of money pays 2/3 of our nation's bills. We put money in, and in turn we get out programs and services and things of all shapes and sizes, from affordable housing to national parks. Our payroll taxes, they go into different pots of money called trust funds, because they're earmarked, and earmarked means that they're dedicated for particular purposes. Payroll taxes and trust funds pay largely for Social Security and Medicare. Now, I border on nerdy, but even I know that the 3 words put together, the federal budget, don't inspire a lot of excitement in most people. In fact, and here's the paradox, even though right at this very moment, the federal budget is at the center of high stakes and heated national debates, very few of us, absolutely very few of us, know what it really looks like. If we knew the ways in which our lives were connected to myriad tiny federal programs and the ways in which we fund those programs, phrases like representative democracy would actually mean something. When my daughter was an infant, she struggled mightily with significant physical delays. She didn't walk until she was 2, and it would have taken her much longer had it not been for the physical therapist sent by the federally funded REACH program, our tax dollars at work. She fell behind again a year later, and we enrolled her in an early intervention childhood program out of the public schools, our tax dollars at work again. Medicaid, or a program called Mass Health, kept both my kids healthy. And then when they were in utero, in their birth moms' uteruses, and then later as children, nutrition programs like WIC and food stamps helped both of them. Now, by now, maybe you're wondering, how much did you contribute to the well-being of my kids? Well, by way of example and illustration, I'm going to show you how my 2011 federal income taxes shook out. My $3,925 that I paid to the federal government. About $839 of those dollars went to health programs like Medicare and Medicaid. I paid $106 to food stamps. And I also paid 27% of my federal income taxes to the Pentagon and war. Now, I've had a lot of advantages in my life. Some I was born with, some I worked for, and a lot provided by the government. I was able to go to college because I was eligible for a federally funded subsidized student loan program. Not so much different from the Pell Grants of today that are going to open the door to higher education for more than 9 million students. You know, I'd be here all night if I attempted to name the visible and largely invisible ways that the federal programs in our midst make my life better. And it's not just me, of course. All of us benefit from safe food and clean air, a technology and road and bridge infrastructure, renewable energy research and development, and on and on. Right now, my income far exceeds the ridiculously low eligibility threshold for food stamps and WIC, yet I want my program, my federal income taxes, to fund those programs. Look, I think my kids are the brightest stars in the sky, but in truth, they are no more beautiful or generous or kind than your children, or my neighbor's children, or the kids down the block. And when my kids needed those relatively small federal programs funded through the federal budget by our tax dollars, they were there. And they worked like a giant launching pad. So why not give a little justice to other kids, to other families? A little justice goes a long way. My daughter is going to enter kindergarten this year. Her school is Title I school, and that means that it has a large number of kids who live in poverty. 25% of the kids are eligible for free and reduced lunch. Title I and the lunch programs are federal initiatives. Because no kid learns when they're hungry or cold or lonely or afraid, these programs help everyone. I paid a shockingly small amount of money through my federal income taxes in 2011 for education, $98.12 for Pell Grants, Head Start, Title I, vocational programs. I want to pay more. We need to pay more, even as we look for program efficiencies and cost savings to deal with the deficit. And we have to ask the wealthy to join us. Many of them are willing. They know that their tax burden is the lowest it's been in more than half a century. They know better than I do the ways in which their success is tied to our nation's well-being. Now remember, my $3,925 federal income tax dollars was just the amount I paid in income taxes. I also paid payroll taxes. And those payroll taxes, like my income taxes, were taken directly out of my check and sent to the government. Now, payroll taxes fund things like Social Security and Medicare. Now, if you're 50 years or younger, you may be thinking that your payroll taxes or your FICA taxes aren't doing a whole lot for you right now, since they're largely accessed by us when we get older. I want you to meet Joan Shanley. Generally speaking, you don't mess with nuns, and Joan was no exception. She is a sister of St. Joseph and was for 25 years. She's my aunt and one of the people who raised me. Now, Joan was a school social worker who took stairs 2 at a time. As part of the Catholic worker movement in New York's Lower East Side, she battled racist redlining, and she organized worker boycotts in solidarity with national strikes. Like you and me, she worked her whole life, and like you and me, she paid into Medicare and Social Security. Today, Joan has Parkinson's, hydrocephalus, osteoporosis, and all manner of illnesses. In a million years, Joan Shanley would never imagine the end of her life to look like it does, but it does, because life is not always fair or predictable. In 2 weeks, we're going to move her into a nursing home. We're going to sell her apartment to pay her health bills. If it weren't for Medicare, your tax dollars, your payroll tax dollars, Joan would have been there sooner. But even with Medicare and Social Security and her savings and her private insurance, her money's running out quickly. It'll take about 3 years until the rest of her money from the home sale is gone, less if there is a switch in the White House and Medicare beneficiaries begin to be cut. And then we'll rely on Medicaid, provided Medicaid still exists. In this second, amazing things hang in the balance. Think about the return on investment in this equation. I can't pay for cancer research on the open market. I can't broker environmental regulations for multinational corporations. I can't raise national reading and math scores or create jobs for the scores of young people entering the job market. Can you? No, of course not. But together we can. And it's going to take more than volunteerism to get this kind of heavy lifting done. Now remember, the federal budget is two things. It's what we put in, and it's what we as a nation get back in goods and services and tax breaks, like the ones I get because I own a home and have kids. In Massachusetts, we pay into the federal budget, and we each receive an average of $5,600 back in direct spending, not including tax breaks. Our state budget is 25% made up of federal money from the federal coffers, and that makes its way to city and town governments and businesses across the Commonwealth. If the federal budget is so important, why don't we have an idea of what's inside it? Well, here are 3 ideas. This may be a flash of the obvious, but it's complicated. In fiscal year 2013, the federal budget's projected to be $3.67 trillion. That's a lot of zeros, and I get paid a decent wage to study this stuff. And even when we grab hold, corrosive rhetoric like the nation is broke, or 47% of us pay no taxes, that threatens to shake us loose because it's corrosive. Shame on national media, some national media, and some national politicians for refusing to tell us tough budget truths, and shame on us for making their job so easy. Since we're part of the problem, we have to be part of the solution by speaking up through blogs, Twitter, Facebook, by writing letters to the editor, talking to neighbors, going to town meetings, voting. And here's the third. It's hard to remember, friends, that we're powerful, each of us individually and so much more so collectively. We are stronger than money and politics. We're smarter than spin doctors. Our bodies, body by body, person by person, from the bottom up, are the building blocks of democracy. Every day we get told that we're not powerful enough, that nothing we do is going to make a difference in this nation. Don't buy it. The only thing that removing ourselves from the democratic process means that those with power and access today will have more power and access tomorrow. And you can bet that the kind of federal budget they're going to create is not going to look a whole lot like you or like me. Now, I said a moment ago that the federal budget looked like me and my family, right? But I want a better likeness. And I spend money on what I value. Well, I don't want to spend $1,060 on the military and war when I spend $14 for the education, rehabilitation, and training of our veterans. I don't want to spend $27 for nuclear weapons when I spend 59 cents for PBS and NPR. What are your values? How are you connected to our nation's budget? What are your national priorities? And how are you going to take action so that our federal budget reflects your values? If you don't know, let's find out together. Thanks.